Welcome. Today we are looking at one of the most discussed topics of our time, migration. It is a topic that clearly divides people. But what are actually facts, and what has deliberately created fear? That is exactly what we will explore together. You can almost feel it everywhere, right? This tension, this division whenever the topic comes up. Whether in families, among friends, or in the media, opinions often clash quite strongly. But what if the real problem is not migration itself, but the way we have learned to see it? So let's start the first part of our analysis. It is about a deep bias that shapes the way we see the world, often without us even noticing it. In science, this is called sedentary bias. It means that we unconsciously assume that staying in one place is normal. Movement or migration then appears as the exception, something unusual that needs to be explained. This leads to what researchers call methodological nationalism. It sounds complicated, but it simply means that we automatically equate society with the borders of our country. Everything that comes from outside can then quickly feel like a disturbance of this closed container. But what if this assumption is wrong? What if we look at the world through a different lens? Let's take a look at the facts. Look at this number, about 3%. That is the share of international migrants in the total world population. Considering the heated debates, this is a surprisingly small number. Experts even call this the immobility paradox. Surveys show this very clearly. Not moving is actually the norm, not the exception. The desire to stay in a familiar environment, close to family and friends, is deeply rooted in human behavior. This challenges our assumption that mobility is the normal state. A look at history confirms this as well. Movement has always been a driver of change. From ancient times until today, societies have developed and transformed through migration. So migration is not a modern crisis, it is a constant part of human history. This raises an important question. If migration is historically normal and statistically relatively rare, why does it feel like a constant crisis today? This leads us to our second point, the deliberate construction of fear. This is where political manipulation enters the picture. Populism often tries to weaken trust between citizens and democratic institutions. And how does it do that? By creating simple enemies. The psychological mechanism behind this is quite clever. It is called social identity theory. To create a strong, we group, you need a threatening, they group that people can unite against. Migration becomes a perfect tool for this strategy. In this process, emotions are not rejected, they are used strategically. Empathy is limited only to the in-group, while outsiders are portrayed as undeserving. The message is clear: our compassion belongs only to us. Let's look at a concrete example of how this works in practice. The persistent myth surrounding the events of 2015 in Germany. You have probably heard this sentence before. It is a central part of the populist narrative. It creates the image of lost control and illegal actions by so-called elites. But what are the facts? The EU Dublin regulation was always in force. And within this regulation there is a specific clause called the sovereignty clause. It allows a country like Germany to take responsibility in exceptional crisis situations. So it was not a violation of the law, but the use of an existing legal option. The myth became powerful because a legal action was successfully presented as illegal, which damaged trust in the rule of law. Besides legal myths, there is another powerful tactic: dehumanization. When migrants are not presented as individuals with personal stories, but as a faceless mass, a wave, or even a weapon, empathy is deliberately blocked. All of this may sound quite discouraging, but the important question is, how can we respond to this machinery of fear? What is the antidote to division? The answer seems to lie in three elements. First, knowledge, to challenge myths and misinformation. Second, encounter, because personal contact remains the strongest enemy of prejudice. And third, empathy, the ability to see the world from another person's perspective. And this is the central insight: the real problem is not the movement of people. That has always existed. The real problem is the fear that is deliberately created in order to turn people against each other. This leaves us with one final question we can all ask ourselves. Social cohesion does not depend only on big political decisions. It also depends on how we treat each other in everyday life, how we listen and how we approach one another. Today we discussed a work by Angeli et al., 2024. If you have questions or topic suggestions, feel free to write to youtube@empowermigra.com. EmpowerMigra, understanding begins with listening.